The opening ceremony will start in 2 minutes. This forum will be divided into 3 parts. The first part will be the keynote speeches, followed by the panel discussion, and end with a lucky draw session. To benefit most from the forum, you are encouraged to raise questions to our speakers by simply sharing your name, occupation, and questions in the chat box. Your questions will be collected, and our speakers will try to address them in the panel discussion. Please also scan the QR code on the screen to fill in the event survey to enter the lucky draw before 8:30. Your comments and suggestions are highly appreciated. You may win up to 1,500 shopping vouchers from a sustainable clothing brands. This is a fully virtual event. Please say hello to us in the comment box. Thank you for your participation. Spread innovative insights.
Stretch knowledge boundaries.
Welcome to CityU MBA Sharp Forum, where business frontier unfolds.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let us begin by giving you a warm welcome to the forum. We're your hosts tonight. My name is Adrian, a first-year MBA student at the City University of Hong Kong.
I'm Miriam, also a first-year MBA student. We know everyone has a very tight schedule, so thank you for taking time to join us tonight.
Tonight marks the second forum of our sustainability series, From Fashion Conscious to Fashion Conscience, which are broadcast on Zoom, Facebook Live, and YouTube.
Adrian, I like your new t-shirt and jeans.
Yeah, I got this last weekend. They were on offer.
Aha! Fun fact, over 50% of Hong Kongers stated that discounts are the key purchase trigger, and 11% of Hong Kongers' monthly expenditure is spent on clothing, which is more than health and education.
Wow, interesting. Well, my t-shirt and jeans are nothing special, just some essential mix and match. Chances are all of us here earn t-shirt and jeans too.
I'm sure you'll build a lot of good memories with them, but did you know that these clothing have experienced a long haul trip before reaching to your closet?
A long haul trip? Go on and tell me more about it.
Sure. They have swam in at least 2,700 liters of water to create their colors. That's enough fluid for an adult to consume for 900 days. And they've also been covered in tons of chemical to soften their fabric. Then put in non-recyclable plastic packaging, only to be shipped to the other side of the world before landing at your doorsteps.
Wow, no wonder why the fashion industry is one of the most polluting industry in the world, contributing to 10% global emission, 20% global wastewater, and 85% of all textiles end up in landfill.
Well, it doesn't have to be this way. As guidelines, the United Nations has set up 17 Sustainable Development Goals. At the United Nations Climate Change Conference last November, countries have agreed to secure global carbon net zero by mid-century. Industry experts are working hard to drive this agenda forward. So, what has the fashion industry been doing?
Great question. You're in the right place tonight. Research on making the fashion industry less polluted have been conducted by research institutes. Businesses have been using innovative ideas from research studies to weave their clothes that reduce textile waste. Retail owners focus on ethically produced carbon-neutral materials clothing, and some eco-label companies are doing verification work to help consumers identify whether garments are sustainable. It has been a great honor for us to invite industry experts to share their thoughts. By the end of the forum, we hope all of us are able to dress fashionably and sustainably.
We'd like to encourage you again to be brave and set yourself a goal to ask at least one question during tonight's forum. Questions can be raised through the chat box by sharing your name, occupation, along with the questions, and we'll try and get them addressed during our panel discussion.
All right, let's invite our first speaker of the night, Mr. Edwin Kerr, MH. Edwin is the CEO of the Hong Kong Research Institute of Textiles and Apparel. He also teaches supply chain operations in the Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania. Edwin had a career as senior executive with several international consumer goods and retail companies. He was granted a number of awards, including the Medal of Honor in 2020 by the Hong Kong government for his research work during the pandemic. Inside Retail Hong Kong named him one of the top 50 innovative retail leaders in 2019. Edwin will share how the fashion industry became one of the most polluted industry and how to break through its destiny. Edwin, the stage is yours.
Good evening. Thanks for sharing the stage with me, and I'm delighted to be here tonight. Let me share my screen. Excuse me as somebody who doesn't do this a lot. I hope this is displaying properly. I want to share with you a little bit about how we got here. You know, what is the journey that took us to where we are today, and how the shape of the global supply chain of the world got to be where it is. So fashion used to be a seasonal event. I mean, we got summer clothes when it's hot, and then when it's winter, we put on warmer clothes to keep ourselves warm. And that was it. And that was the intent and purpose in the use of clothes. And then there was certainly a very clear hierarchy about where fashion and concept and the whole definition of what is good looking came from. And so we had designers who set the agenda and set the direction of where fashion is going. And then we had and it was commercialized and popularized in the high streets with the department stores. In about the 1970s, some discounters came along, big box operators, and so there was also a bottom layer of mass market merchants, so that now we have fashion that is accessible by all the different groups in society. Then the internet happened in the 1990s, and that changed everything. Internet disrupted this whole neat and tidy pyramid that was created, in which we had these opinion leaders in the top and everybody else follower at the bottom. All of a sudden, the social media made fashion a social event. It was no longer a hierarchical event, and so that the opinion makers and the style shapers was everybody in the social media. The most popular voices won. Then also around the same time, the financial markets began to evaluate companies differently by rewarding companies that grew. So the faster you grew, the more valuable you are in the marketplace. So market caps of growth companies are much larger than the caps of companies that are just chugging along, making a decent profit. So that drove everybody in the fashion industry to pursue growth over everything else. So how do you drive growth, right? So you drive growth by selling more products, and you try to sell more products by producing more goods to sell. And you sell more products by creating more marketplaces. So you proliferate across the world into different markets, and you try to create more styles, and you create more reasons for people to shop. And so you truncated the fashion seasons. So fashion cycles became faster and faster. And Zara, one of the early adopters of this really rapid fast fashion cycle, was the king at the turn of the century in the early 2000s. And then market cycles and fashion cycles went from seasons to months, and went from months to weeks. And then most recently, we have new disruptors like Shein, people who actually use social media very efficiently and don't decide on what to make until they get all the feedback from their potential customers. Fashion cycle became days. And so we are seeing more and more growth in volume and faster growing velocity in our fashion cycles. And newness became the key thing, right, rather than seasonality. And apparel became consumables, much like single-use items that we use in rest of our lives. We started thinking of them very differently, as opposed to how a generation ago we think of clothes as durables and investments in some cases. So, and also lower costs, the affordability of clothes took the place of good value. A way to look at how the volume of how we consume grew would be in comparison with a chart like this. So this is a chart comparing the largest container ports in the world, 1989 and 2009. And I picked these 2 years because it really is a great way to illustrate what is going on. So in 1989, Hong Kong is the largest container port in the world, 4.5 million TEUs. TEUs, it's 20-foot equivalent units. So how many 20-foot containers came through Hong Kong in 1989? It was 4.5, and that made them the top of the pile. In 2009, Hong Kong went down the rank, but that's not the important point that I want us to see here. The thing I want us to see here is in 2009, if Hong Kong continued to ship only 4.5 million 20-foot containers, it wouldn't even be on this chart. The largest port at this point in time now is already shipping at 25, close to 26 million TEUs. This is the order of magnitude of the sheer volume of things we were consuming and things that we were using up. In this span of 20 years, we consumed more and more, greater and greater volume, and that was how we grew through those 20 years. The challenging thing for us, and probably for those of you who are in the audience listening to this right now, is that this is one thing that is driving growth, but the other thing that's driving growth is this. The middle class, the global middle class, is not growing in the United States and the EU, where Hong Kong in 1989 was shipping all the stuff to. The growth is now happening in India and China. So we have another 200, 300 million consumers coming up and beginning to consume between now and 2050, who are going to consume as much, if not more, than their Western counterparts in the last 20 years. This is going to create an even larger problem, especially for the sheer volume of things that are going to be consumed. When we look at the scale of the economic growth that we'll be experiencing, this will eclipse everything that has happened in North America and Europe. So it's not only a growth in our traditional marketplaces, but in the emerging marketplaces. And then you can see the subsequent carbon footprint that this produces and how unsustainable this is all going to become. So the challenge for us as we look at sustainability and a topic like fast fashion is that we need to scale up our solutions and to scale them up quickly. The danger of sustainability is that we are doing too little and we're doing it too late. And that is something that hopefully we get to hear a little bit about tonight. So how are we addressing some of this? So I run something called the Research Institute for Textile and Apparel. We're an applied research center under the Innovation and Technology Fund. And we do applied research, solutions that are useful to the marketplace. And the way we look at sustainability and at the research center is we want to try to do less bad things and we want to try to do more good things. Simple, right? So what does that look like? And what does that mean in terms of the experiments that we do? Well, the first thing in terms of less bad things is we're cleaning up the mess that we have made already with the products and with the materials that we've used already. So in our case, a lot of recycling and recycling at the point of use, for consumer recycling. The challenge with our supply chain right now is that the factories are not in the big cities where consumers live. In fact, they're tens of thousands of miles away, and so you can't process the highest volume of things that are available for process, post-consumer waste. So we do things like build factories in first world cities. So this is a factory, a recycling factory that we built in Tai Po. And here, this factory processes about 3 tons of waste, post-consumer waste a day. And it does it by using a lot of automation and a lot of intelligence. So what we developed automated AGVs. We developed robotics, and we developed computer image vision and computer imaging, so that we can automate this process and speed up this process and make this process affordable and accessible in the first world. Another example, which is very creating a lot of excitement right now in the luxury area, is that we are figuring out ways to reuse leather so that we don't have to keep going back to use of virgin leather, and that we can keep leather in use longer and longer. So we are using an all-protein solution so that we can make natural feeling, natural looking leather from old leather scraps. Part of recycling, we're developing new ways to do recycling. So this is a system that we put in also in Taipo, which uses heat and pressure to separate blended material, and this is a fiber to fiber system. This is the first system in the world to do something like that, and this was online in 2019. And today we developed this about 100 kilos a day system to be able to develop to produce all sorts of useful materials. Yarns become yarns, and other fibers and cellulose are also generated from clothes that we break down. And this is a 1.5 ton a day system. So this is, we went from about 100 kg to about 1.5 tons a day. This is a system that is in a manufacturer right now. And so this factory takes its own fabric and fiber waste and turns them into new fibers that it reuse again. So we scaled it up. I mean, we need to scale this up 10x again if we're going to make an impact. We use cellulosic materials that we produce from that system to have irrigation experiments. So this is an experiment we are conducting right now in India, in which we are growing cotton without irrigation by using cellulose as a way to manage the moisture in the soil. And we're on second big experiment with this. And also we are experimenting with biological processes. This is a tank that sits 9 floors below me in the Science Park, where we use fermentation and enzymes to break materials down so that we can create new types of materials and the cool thing about using biological methods is that it is a very low energy process. Basically the biological processes themselves, fermentation and the enzymes, do all the work for us. So we have high hopes for a system like this. And so all of that is to clean up the stuff that already exists in the marketplace today and to extend the useful life of products that we're using today. But we can't continue to clean up messes, we believe. So what we have to do is to change the way the business is run and change so that we can have better business models, better materials, and smarter businesses. And the way we look at this is across different horizons in which we really try to disrupt the marketplace in the long run. So one of our first experiment in this area was we use social media as a way to help us predict better what the fashion trends are 90 days from now. So this is a project we did to predict what the trends are, what the colors should be, and we helped a retailer to more accurately put the right products in the right color and the right sizes in their right retail outlets, so that they sold more goods while making fewer garments, so that they don't end up with things that they can't sell off. So this is a way that we do predictive analytics, so that we can do much better and more accurate forecasting. Another thing that we're doing that is a big push on us is on improving not only the materials, but the biodiversity of the environment where we grow things. And then also to support carbon neutral or carbon negative goals. How do we become a carbon neutral or carbon negative industry in a world which really have this ambition for the next 20, 30 years? So this means using new types of materials supported by new types of sources of energy and with smart new types of business models. And all that are new types of projects that we're learning, new types of retail tools and business models, renting and leasing, using better predictive tools, and creating better infrastructure for renewable energy so that we can have high efficiency and reduce the costs of all the materials that we use. So, and also in the process, figure out what the transition model is so that we can transition from where we are today to where we want to be. An example of a material like this is something that a startup in San Francisco called Allbirds adopted, a self-cleaning material that they use in their t-shirts so that the consumer doesn't have to wash their clothes as frequently. It doesn't have to use hot water to keep it clean. in 2018, in the Mills, Namfong Mills, which is a shopping mall that they opened in an old mill, we opened our first garment-to-garment shop, in which we asked consumers to bring their old clothes to us, and through an 8-step process, we broke the materials down back to yarns and fibers, and we had a 3D knitting machine in the back end, and we gave consumers new clothes made out of the old material that they brought along. And we are experimenting with new types of business models with inventory-less made to order types of businesses. And one of the brands that is in this space is from Walden, I'll call Unspun, which is something you'll hear more about later this evening. And this system was adopted by H&M, and this system now today exists in their flagship store in Stockholm, Sweden, and which also won them a lot of retail awards as a result. And we want to build more and more of these point of sale types of solutions, not so much as to solve the volume of the problems we're facing, but to engage the consumer so that they understand the whole process of recycling, and they understand that the materials that we use are quite robust and can be useful for a long time. The next project we're going on is something called the Open Lab, which is a experimental space that we are building right now in Hong Kong. And we have a bunch of brands and manufacturers working with us. And what we're going to do is to create these different solutions, but do it in an end-to-end way, so that the manufacturer and the retailer and the logistics provider are all in the same room, helping us solve the problems together. So these are ideas that we're pursuing. And the challenge for what we're doing, and perhaps for events like tonight, is to encourage us not to carry on as if things can be the same for the next 50 years. Because I think that's about the worst thing that could happen, the worst choice that we can make. What is the best thing that can happen if we go down this road and start playing around with these new types of models? I think the best thing that could happen is if we fail to hit the target by a large margin. If we aim to be carbon negative, but we only end up carbon neutral. The advantage of that is that it moves the needle, it helps us to think about things differently, and it actually allows us to explore all sorts of new models. I'll stop here. Thank you very much. I look forward to your questions later this evening.
Can be disrupted by doing less bad and more good. Besides, thank you for encouraging business to set a higher bar for themselves, from just being a carbon zero company to a carbon negative company through technology and innovation. Now that we have heard about what possibilities research institutes have developed, let's hear from our next star speaker, a Stanford MBA graduate, co-founder and CEO of an award-winning robotic and digital apparel company, Unspun, to share the journey on commercializing some of these ideas on one of the most polluted categories in the industry, denim. Unspun won multiple global awards, including Best Inventions in Time magazines in 2021. Mr. Walden Lam, please.
Cool. Thank you so much. A great pleasure to be here, mostly because I think it's fascinating how this panel is put together with Edwin and Kayla, good friends of ours, but also the spectrum that we can have the conversation about, from Kayla being such an expert in consumer branding and community building, to Edwin's world of all the fascinating projects that he has put together with research and putting the business community together. So he has explained fashion in a very macro level, and I'll try to follow that narrative and talk specifically about what we have done in the industry, and a specific segment within sustainable fashion that's called On Demand. So Unspun was essentially founded on the notion that we can create on demand. We are setting up these technologies, complementary technologies, to be able to reduce carbon emissions. The reason why we had to do that was fashion supply chain it's one of the most complicated systems in the world, and it doesn't necessarily always work for the consumer. So one, essentially when you shop online, which is, you know, an increasing trend, especially coming out of COVID, when you shop fashion e-commerce products, a lot of times you have to return, and we're spoiled into this behavior of buying many items and essentially returning the products that you don't want. You know, this is an accepted behavior and kind of a trained behavior. But the result of that is a lot of the goods actually get returned. At this point, we're looking at 40 to 50% of all the goods that we purchase online are returned. And the system is not really able to handle all the returned goods. If you think about, you know, the reverse logistics of having to, you know, press and repackage the goods, send them back into the system. So actually, a lot of the goods that we return do not end up in the final, you know, system for refurbishing. So that's a huge issue, and a lot of that has to do with fit and sizing. Two, the fashion supply chain generally is a very manual labor intensive one, and that's why we have to outsource a lot of the manufacturing process. You know, from the days when we manufacture in China to Southeast Asia, now we're doing it in Bangladesh, in Ethiopia, because we have to take advantage of the low labor cost to produce, like what Edwin said, to support the growth. And because we have to outsource, and because the supply chain is so specialized, generally between the time when products are designed to when products are available, we're talking about a 12 to 18 month cycle. And so when you do that, when products finally arrive, consumer taste generally has shifted. If you look at a 1 to 2 year, you know, design cycle. And so what end up happening is when products are available, consumers no longer want them. And so even before COVID, 15 to 20% of all the goods that were produced, they're never sold, never worn. Because if you think about it, to find the precise style, color, size combination that, you know, consumers would want is really, really tricky. So because of that, that stock itself, it's $150 billion problem. And fashion, depending on what source you trust, accounts for anywhere from 4 to 8% of carbon emissions. If we do nothing about this, in about 10 years, fashion will be accounting for about 20% of our carbon budget. And so that's why we've been focused on demand. And I think an awakening moment for the fashion industry really happened about 10 years ago in 2013, where there was a massive accident that happened in Bangladesh. Over 1,000 people, workers in Bangladesh died. And it really brought to light a lot of the back end of the fashion supply chain that wasn't obvious to fashion consumers. And so since then, a lot of the fashion companies have improved their transparency, improved their practices, but still on the inventory side, it's still a taboo that the fashion industry doesn't really like to talk about. Companies like Amazon, like Nike, Burberry, H&M, they've all sort of come under scrutiny for burning the products that they don't sell. So for us as a company, we really focus on this model because we look at this, 20% problem of fashion items not being sold and having to be incinerated. Can we change that? So that's why we focus on demand. One of the first products that we've launched and Edwin alluded to is this, custom jeans process. One, because we've heard a lot of pain points from end consumers saying that, finding fitting jeans is really, really hard. And two, denim is one of the most polluting categories. So if we can make an impact there, we can start to make a pretty sizable impact. So with this process of allowing customers to customize the jeans, and we use a phone scanning solution. So, you can access that if you go onto the App Store, search Unspun. It's a 10-second scanning process. We handle everything on the back end. We have the capability to render the garment, and we deliver the products to the end consumers within the next, 2 to 3 weeks. At this point, we're probably one of the best in doing this. So without ever physically measuring the customers or having to physically return the products, customer happy rate is over 90%. So we think this is a new way to digitally engage the customers without having to generate the garment waste that the conventional production process happens. Like I said, we also have this capability to be able to render the garments on the back end so that we can manage this subjective expectation of what a fit would mean, what a skinny fit would mean on the body before we even physically create the garment. Like this allows us to really bridge between the world of virtual and physical without generating the physical waste. So that's the part that Unspun is known for. When you search Unspun, that's what we generally are public about. One thing that we've been working on the background that at the very early days of Unspun, we've gotten a lot of advice from Edwin around is this 3D weaving mechanism. So beyond the scanning and software customization, we thought one of the ways to be able to shorten and compress the supply chain is to automate. And so what a 3D weaving machine does, a little bit similar to what the 3D knit machine that Hong Kong Rita has in many of the setups, is to essentially take yarns, three-dimensionally weave it from the ground up in practically a zero waste process. So we have this machine here, actually right next to me. We can weave the pant legs that are needed for the pants, all customized within 9 to 10 minutes. And you can, because we're weaving the pant legs, you can also choose different yarns, different weave structure to be able to enhance the functionality of the garment. The other big part is because this is automated, you can really bring manufacturing onshore. So to the point where we can be plugging into circularity systems that Edwin and other recycling innovators are building. Plug into the ecosystem where after the recycling plants generate the fibers and yarns, that we can automate the weaving process so that the whole end-to-end system actually happens onshore. Yeah, and then a lot that's happening within the denim space is certification process, life cycle assessments. So we are no different. So on our jeans, we conduct life cycle assessments to make sure that we're really making an impact. And we would measure our emissions. And so when you shop Unspun today, you save about 40% of carbon emissions. That's primarily because we're diverting waste from landfill and using low impact fiber. Just last example of what we do, we work a lot on collaborations. So this is one of the collections that we launched in 2021, essentially collaborating with global partners to ensure circularity. So the button of the jeans are removable, so that at the end of life, you can just push them out and reuse the buttons. We use a stitching thread that fuses at a lower temperature, so that at the end of the life cycle, we can reuse the fabric that comes out of this. Using EcoWash, recycle 99% of the water, and then essentially complying with Ellen MacArthur Foundation's jeans redesign standards, so that we, if it ends up in a recycling facility, this can be recycled at scale. And then traceability as well. Every jeans has a QR code. So yeah, just a very small example of how we collaborate and just want to support circularity. With that, I'll pass it back on to the MC.
In disrupting the mainstream supply chain model and marrying different technologies to reduce carbon footprint and landfill waste in the fashion industry. Our audience from the manufacturing industry can better understand how responsible production can also be fashionable while profitable. Now that we have talked about the production side, let's move on to responsible consumption. We all go shopping, but how can we shop responsibly to the environment? A lot of the time, people are less willing to spend more on sustainable products. Our next guest speaker, Ms. Kayla Wong, graduated from the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising in Los Angeles, and became owner of an ethical brand, Basics for Basics, at the age of 23. She will share how consumers also play a crucial role in sustainable development of the industry. Kayla, the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. Okay, let me just share my screen. All right, here we go. Hi, everyone. So we just heard a lot of great information on the tech side of what sustainable fashion is. So I'm going to go into a little bit of what consumers can do, we as the everyday person can do to help better the industry. So just a little mind invoker, something to think about. This was said by Sass Brown, who is a renowned author. Cheap fashion is really far from that. It may be cheap in terms of the financial cost, but very expensive when it comes to the environment and the cost of human life. So I want that to sink in for a second, because I think a lot of times when we talk about clothes, when we go shopping, we never really think about where our clothes come from, and who are the people that make our clothes, how do they happen. So when I started my journey in sustainable fashion, one of the very first things I did was I was recommended to watch The True Cost. I think at the time it actually just came out. And honestly, it is one of the best documentary films that have really shaped the way that I see the industry. It is a documentary film that explores the impact of fashion on people and the planet. It discusses several aspects of the garment industry, from production, mainly exploring the life of low-wage workers in developing countries, to its after effects such as river and soil pollution, pesticide contamination, disease, and death. I mean, that sounds very dire, which, I have to say 10 years ago, the fashion industry was going in that direction. But I think nowadays, you can see a lot of brands like Walden, myself, and a lot of other people who are really trying to change what the industry is doing. And so during my research, when I was starting out, I really focused on the ethical part of the business. So I really wanted to share with my consumers, with my customers, where their clothes came from. I tried to be as transparent as possible, which meant that, I shared what manufacturer I used. I also joined the Fashion Revolution campaign, which I think they do a great work of highlighting the people that make the clothes. They do a campaign called Who Made My Clothes, which encourages consumers to ask the question and to really dig deeper and find out whether or not you're buying from a brand or a company that is practicing ethically. Like Walden earlier mentioned, in 2013, the Rana Plaza disaster happened, and it was a tragedy within the fashion world that really shook everything up. And Fashion Revolution was born out of that, and they're a great platform. So if you would like to look into that, I encourage you to do that. And one very shocking number, I think with what I'm trying to do here, I'm not trying to scare you guys, but I really want to encourage you guys to take that step of thinking beyond just looking at a piece of clothing as it is. So in Hong Kong, we dump around 170 tons of clothes every single day. That is crazy. That is about 1,800 t-shirts per minute. I mean, that's a lot of t-shirts. And nowadays, a lot of our clothing are actually made with synthetics, which means that they cannot biodegrade over time. And so if you can imagine, all of these clothes are just sitting somewhere in a pile with no purpose and nowhere else to go. So with that being said, I really think that what I really want you guys to get out of my presentation today is that you can be the change you want to see in the world. I think a lot of us think that we as everyday people, don't really, my habits don't really affect what's happening. But in fact, it really does. The way that the fashion industry has changed over the years, it's because the customers demand it. The traditional fast fashion customer, when fast fashion first came about, I think it was because people started demanding more styles. People wanted cheaper clothes. They wanted to be the trendiest, but not paying the most. And so that really created and fueled this whole fast fashion industry. But I think now we're kind of slowing down and we're going back to, thinking about where our clothes come from and wanting to know more about the story behind the brand. I think more people are wanting better quality now. And I want to say maybe this is still a very niche group of people, but there are definitely people who are pushing this movement forward, which is to demand more transparency and accountability. And with all the different movements that are happening, like the one that I just mentioned, the fashion revolution, in Hong Kong, there's also Redress that does a lot of educational promotion on sustainable fashion. With all of these movements put together, with all of everybody's efforts put together, that's how we were able to change the fashion industry. So when it comes to being a more conscious consumer, I think there are a few points that I think are very easy to adapt. And I encourage you guys to try if you guys haven't yet. So one of the things to think about is to think about the lifespan of the product that you're buying, right? Wearing your clothes 50 times instead of 5, which is actually the fast fashion average, can reduce carbon emissions by 400% per item per year. So that's actually, you're saving a lot. So when choosing your new clothes or, when you're shopping, the one thing that I think you can also focus on is the quality. When you're able to focus on buying better and the life cycle of your clothes are able to last longer in your closet, you're already helping save so much environmental wise. And then so you also want to try and find items that can be worn year round. So for example, a white t-shirt, something that's very basic, something that's very simple. You can layer it throughout the year. Make sure you find the right fit for you. I think a lot of times we, especially now with online shopping, it's so easy for us to just click and feel like you don't really need to try something on, or feel like if it doesn't fit properly, then it doesn't matter. I can just, throw it away or whatever. But I think it's those steps that make you a more conscious consumer, and that is what we're trying to head towards. And another thing is wardrobe staples, which now I will move into. Like I said earlier, white t-shirts are a great item to have in your closet. You can easily throw a blazer on, and then it will go from a day to night look. Or, little black dresses, which this is more for the women in the audience. I think this is a great item to have in your closet. Again, it can go from day to night. And obviously, if you have meetings and, if it's like school stuff, you can always wear a simple black dress and you will already look very elegant and put together. Jackets, I think finding a very nice, clean overcoat will very much elevate your closet. A good pair of denim, Walden's jeans. I have 2 pairs and I literally wear them all the time. Great fit, again, I emphasize on great fit is really important. So even being able to pick all of these things out, sometimes you might still want to change it up a bit. I think the best way that you can do is you can swap with your friends. I think that's a great way to re-edit your closet, meaning, you can each pick 2 to 3 items and kind of swap with each other every month or every 3 months. It's really up to you. Or you can also donate to reliable organizations like Redress of Hong Kong. So the next thing would be upcycling or thrifting. I find this to be the most fun because you can really be creative with this. Upcycling means that you're able to take an old garment, update it, redesign it, and make it into something new. And so you can use embroidery, you can do a lot of different things with it. There's also a great company called the Fashion Clinic that does a really good job in this area. And I also think you can shop secondhand. Obviously, I think back in the day it was a bit of a taboo, but now I feel more and more people are willing to shop secondhand. And then you want to look into the company. When you're buying products, like I said, as being a conscious consumer, I think it's all about taking those steps to really think about where you're buying from, where your clothes are made. And so you want to look at if this company, are they combating climate change? Are they using sustainable materials? Are they being transparent? And I think this goes both ways. As a brand, I think if you're thinking about doing a startup, these are some great points to really think about and have them sink in. Are you working with a manufacturer that's ethical, that's giving minimum wages? So yeah. And lastly, I just wanted to share a couple of resources that I found really useful. So as consumers, I think Good On You app, which is on social media, if you're on social media, they're a great platform that shares insight and ratings on different brands, how they impact people, the planet, and animals, and helps you kind of see through the greenwashing, as they say. And then if you are a brand, if you are a startup, when I started my brand, I found Common Objective to be really helpful. They are a platform that helps you get matched with people and tools that you need in the fashion industry to be more sustainable. You can find practical tools and resources and learn from experts and how to combine sustainability with commercial success. And lastly, to be able to keep your clothes better in your wardrobe, Dress with Sense by Redress is a great book. If you want to learn how to take care of your clothes better, to wear them longer, and to dispose of them smarter, definitely look into it. And lastly, I just want to leave you guys with one of the most iconic quotes relating to sustainable fashion by Vivienne Westwood: "Buy less, choose well, and make it last." Thank you.
Thank you, Kayla. Through your sharing, we have created an awareness on how our consumer behaviors and actions can impact the environment, as well as humanity and the future. Listening to the highlights of the documentary, True Cost, I agree that sometimes we may lack awareness on what is happening on the other side of the world. The lack of transparency is an issue that needs to be addressed for consumers to make the right sustainable decision. So what are the tools that empower us to make a greener choice? This flows to Candace Wang's sharing on transparency and traceability. As Managing Director of PFI Far East, she has over 17 years of experience in testing, inspection, and certification for the footwear and garment industry. Candace will share one of the tools that you and I can take note of when validating sustainability for our next purchase. Candace, please.
Okay. Just give me a second. I need to unshare again because I tried that before and okay, good. Can you see that? Can you see that? Okay, great, thanks. So good evening and everyone, nice to meet you here. I'm Candace Wong, Managing Director of PFI Far East in Hong Kong. We are the third party in tech industry TIC stands for testing, inspection, and certification. So our headquarters is in Germany as a non-profit organization. So it's so nice to be here together with Edwin, Morgan, and Kayla, and all of you. I'm going to share some of the to share like how consumer can make a greener choice by taking note of the transparency that comes along with sustainability certificate from digitalizing the supply chain. So just a moment. Okay, so we are now actually 66 years in 2022. So I'm not talking about like some information about PFI, but what I want to say from the past decades, the focus from this industry is starting from price, and then price together with quality, and then CSR comes to the top, and then the sustainability for now. So what would be the next? In my view, they are transparency, traceability, and predictability. And I think some of them are covered already by Walden, Edwin, and Kayla already. And so that what would be the next of the next, I think they are waiting for us and our next generation to create them. So as a consumer, how do you identify, just a moment. Yeah, how do you identify that eco-friendly product? Normally, when you choose a fashion product, that I think price is the first thing that you might like put it into your idea. So where it will be the price tag. And then what together with the price tag when you shop online or in shop, they are hand tagged if you notice them, or the product description on the online shop. And that's the information you know from online or offline shop, and you can make a choice to decide to buy it or not. So besides the label, you have besides the label that you have the you may have the environmental information of a sustainable product by social media, advertisement, and introduced by friend. But then eco-label including with or without the hand tag, okay, it's most common and effective way to pass environmental information from the manufacturer to the end user. So what is eco-label then? Okay, so eco-label, they are mark placed on the product packaging or like an e-catalogs that can help consumer quickly and easy identify those products that meet specific environmental performance criteria. And they differentiate itself with the similar product. The first two are the Blue Angel and the eco-label. They are actually from the government. No, they are not from the government, sorry. But you will need these label if you would like to be listed in the Green Public Procurement called GPP system in European Union. And of course that you may know the energy start you can see quite often. And the FSC is actually quite, you will know that when you receive a new clothes with the packaging, okay? So just a moment. So that's, just a moment, yeah, okay. So I just mentioned that eco-label is actually to make it very quick to differentiate from the similar product. So then what would be the benefit of the eco-label? So that eco-label, it can be contributed into two important ways. Firstly, they can increase the consumer awareness of the environmental issues and influence their choice in favor of less polluting product. And second, they can push industry to produce the environmental friendly product. So any concerns of the eco-label? Yeah. Okay. So you will see the jungle, the eco-label jungle. So not sure how many you can really recognize and then know what it is for. So actually the value and the effectiveness of eco-label depends on the information that is meaningful and reliable. So what is meaningful means actually, I just give a very quick example that recycled steel, it's not meaningful. Why? Because in the developed country like US and Europe, the heavy industry developed more than 100 years. Therefore, the use of the scrap metal and has become an integral part of the modern steel making sector. So different from China, with only 30 years developing in the same field, that you will need to use the raw material, means that you have to buy. So I would say meaningful, it's a developing concept. And another thing will so-called, like, for example, some of the claim, they say that it's not really effective because they will mention like 1% of the material, recycled material. Do you think that is meaningful? For me, that I think it's quite of like not really even a step, a little step. And then the reliable, that with the traceability and transparency, that it will give you more reliable, because that you can really see during the production line. So that how PFI supports sustainability, I will make it very quick. I'm not sure that how many minutes I still have. So that we have, I just mentioned we are in the tech industry, but then in between that we develop also like to certificate, we have RMC and RMC Blue. They are, what will be the benefit of them? Firstly is the waste upcycling, that encourage the upcycling of PET in global product supply chain. Second, the material transparency is accurately track recycled material from the recycling source to the finished product. The third is the sustainable industry. It fosters the social and the environmental friendly manufacturing. So how is the certificate can reach the waste upcycling, material transparency, and sustainability industry? There are 5 main steps in the RMC Certificate Pro. Will need to process to make sure it make the goal. The first will be test the material, and second is assess the suppliers. The third is trace the material along the supply chain. The fourth is to certify by the three elements that I just mentioned. And then is communicate to bring your achievement to the customer by how that PFI will issue a QR code in the hand tag. I think there's another issue about the real hand tag, okay? But then where the consumer, with the scanned QR code with the consumer, that you can verify the validity of their product certificate and the recycled content of their product contents. And so I must say that we didn't, it's not owned by PFI, I mean the software, we just use it as a tool. And this is one of the tools we are using. And I must say the traceability is actually the backbone of the sustainability solution. On the left side, it's actually PFI trace this certified material throughout the whole supply chain by digital cloud-based platform, by entering the data sharing, and also the analysis. On the right side, the end user can simply scan QR code on their product package, and then you will know that where it is coming from. Okay, so here simply with the QR code that you can trace from the collection center to the final shipping product. So it provides you the some of the checking of the material. So that in my part, that I would like to say that eco-label, they are really like fast understanding from directly when you buy it, no matter is virtual or really with the hand tag. And it will influence that your purchasing decision. And then the second would be the effective eco label. It will require the meaningful and reliable information. The third one that even that is not from PFI, it has to be meaningful and reliable. But of course, that we do cover by this by the three elements, which as I mentioned here, encourage the waste upcycling, foster the sustainable industry, and ensure the material transparency. So I hope that you will get some more like concept that when normally that you just cut it out and then put it away or put it in the trash can, but then probably from now on you can just read more, or even when you search from internet you can have a look more about the information. Thank you then.
Thank you, Candice, for sharing one of the tools consumers can use to validate sustainability. Now that we have the eco label from an independent third party, consumers can increase awareness and influence their choice on pushing industry players to produce more environment-friendly products.
Before moving on to our next session, we would like to remind you to submit the forum survey before 8:30 to participate in our lucky draw. You may access the survey via the link shared in the chat box or by scanning the QR code on the screen.
All right, we have collected some interesting questions already. Please continue to raise any questions you have on fashion sustainability by simply sharing your name, occupation, and question in the chat box. Our industry experts will share their insights from researching to commercializing the business ideas and delivering the products to consumers. They will try to answer your questions during the discussion.
Now, please join us to welcome back Edwin, Walden, Kayla, and Candice for our panel discussion. Candice will be the moderator for this discussion. We'll now pass the time to Candice.
Okay, so thank you, Miriam and Adrian. It's my pleasure to be the moderator in the panel discussion. And we are all concerned about like how to be fashionable and sustainable. So how can we do better? Choose better starting from ourselves. I am sure that there are plenty of questions already come in to the speakers. So Miriam and Adrian, their team will collect all the questions from the checkbox with your names, occupations, and questions. So due to the limit of the time, we would choose only the most popular questions to our speaker. So are you ready for the deep dialogue with Edwin, Kay, Walden, and Kayla? So let's go. So I would like to address the first question to Walden as a superstar in the fashion industry, which is that disrupting the supply chain by your company. So we've got this evening, or like for you is in the morning, that lots of students, young designers, and entrepreneurs they would like to know that what would be the biggest challenge you faced when you started your business in Silicon Valley, and how did you overcome them? Gordon, please.
How much time have we got? Challenges. So yeah, I think at the macro level, like what Edwin was alluding to, and Kayla a little bit too, like the fashion industry, fashion supply chain it's a machine, it's a system. And any sort of like machine or like system, generally when they run on inertia. And so when you're trying to stop a system or reinvent or trying to disrupt, you're going against inertia of the system that has been running. For us, a lot of that has to do with scale and growth that was alluded to throughout this panel. When we wanted to create on-demand in the early days, we got a lot of no's. Like everywhere we go, we had a lot of no's. Like we asked manufacturers, hey, can you create on-demand? Like we're creating one piece at a time, 3 pieces at a time, and there were just so many no's. And so what we did was really scrappy. I remember Beth, my co-founder, and I, when we started actually doing our first pop-up in Hong Kong, and we wanted to create on demand, what we needed to do was to actually do a lot of the steps ourselves and then convince the partners to take the other steps. So I remember our first setup was actually at the Science Park. We leased one of the biggest laser cutter bed there, and we would like custom cut the pattern pieces on the denim, and like we would spend 2 days for a batch of 30, 50 pants, and then we would take the cut pieces, we would bring them to a workshop in Xinwan and ask them to sew them up for us, and they don't have this button machine. And so after they're done, we'll have to take the pants to Samsoibo to finish the buttoning. And that you know, that was the early days, is one of the very visceral examples of how we got started, going up against scale and a lot of the manufacturing inertia. But I'll stop there. Yeah, for a lot of these examples.
Oh, okay. I think it's quite interesting because I think for those students or like entrepreneurs, they do have kind of like, maybe I will leave this later to Kayla later, but then illusion, right? I think illusion that after that I start my startup, then I can be like really popular, but it's really different from what you just described. So there is a very interesting like experience that might be can share with the we can share with the audience. Then probably I would give I would ask Kayla the same question, that what kind of challenge like during in your journey, because I know that there's one point that your company wants to ensure the products are made with care and people are treated the right way. That's what I found, and then I think it's quite interesting that you really start from there. But then what would be the challenge? And as for now, that 5 or 6 years already, so what you can share with them, with the audience? Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I think my story is quite similar to Walden. I think at the end of the day, a lot of startups have the same challenges. Is, you know, like you said, when I first started, I think I had the, you know, illusion of thinking that being an entrepreneur, starting my own business, would be better than sitting in an office for a 9-to-5 job, right? But you don't realize that you actually have to put so much more effort and time and learning all of the steps in producing a well-rounded brand. So when I first started, you know, I really struggled with, I think, the educational part of it, which actually I then really focused on, was because back then there were not that many, you know, brands talking about sustainability, right? So people didn't really understand, if I can get a t-shirt at Uniqlo for $95 and you're selling your t-shirt for $250, why do I need to pay more for your product? So it was a lot of reinforcing what we stood for. And even in the beginning of, you know, before I really started pushing to the customers, you know, even just pitching it to people, a lot of people were like, oh, you're not going to succeed because you're not focused on making the money. I never really focused on making the money. And I think that was a balance that was probably the biggest challenge for me to strike. And so I think that is honestly, especially for brands who are really trying to push the boundaries of sustainability within the industry, I think that is definitely probably the biggest challenge, is how do you continue to be sustainable, but at the same time still generate enough revenue to keep yourself afloat.
Yeah, okay, that is really not easy. So that I just in between that we received some of the question from the audience. I will start with this one, that it's from Esther Check, that there is saying of the slow fashion instead of fast fashion, which hopefully can expand the lifespan of the piece, of the nice clothes, which in turn bring less harm to our environment. So how do you see the trend acceptable to general public? Probably, Adrien, you would like to answer this question?
Well, one of the challenges with the fast fashion consumer is that it really doesn't buy you a lot of utility or satisfaction. That very few people feel good about buying something cheap that they can only use one time or infrequently and then dispose of it, because you feel bad about that purchase. You don't feel good about what you have just done to the environment, because you know after all this time now that there are some issues with that. And so the utility that you get, why do we consume? We consume to feel good. We've consumed to look good. And so it doesn't give us either of those things, because it's probably not well produced, or the fad came and went so quickly that you couldn't wear it multiple times. So the challenge with fashion, I think, is that we understand what the utility is for it in the first place, and that we purchase in a way that makes sense. So we buy more selectively. We make more conscious and better decisions about why we buy. When we buy something, we should feel good about it, because to the point that you've raised, Candice, if you get educated about your purchases and you do the research at the point of sale, then you feel a sense of security and you feel good about what you've purchased. And in the end, that gives you the utility that you wanted from that fast fashion purchase in the first place. So fast fashion itself is not sustainable. So it's I think we all need to learn and discover new ways to consume.
Thanks, Dan. I will go to the next questions to Walden. That he say that he or she. Okay, I can see that Unspun is helping to produce a pair of jeans with least waste. However, customer may need to change a new pair because of body and trend change. So what can consumer do in this case?
Yeah, so we take care, at least for Unspun, we take care of the jeans even at the end of life. So if body changes, some customers of ours, like maybe they go through pregnancy, and they still love the pair of jeans. We alter the jeans to make sure that they fit. If it's trend changes, we take back the jeans, and like I said, that's why in the production of the denim, we have put together sort of practices around circularity, so we can reuse the fabric pieces. We've actually created a collection using refurbished fabrics for shorts, color blocked. So yeah, there's so much that we can do. We have recycling partners in North America and Europe and in Asia to be handling the jeans as well. An interesting anecdote there, actually. 2-3 years ago, I met with a Japanese company. All they do, they have a really, really interesting business model. So they would buy raw denim, raw Japanese denim, and then they would actually just send them to fishermen. They send them to fishermen, wear them for 2 years, and then resell the worn denim to end consumers with a worn look 2 years later for 3x the price. It's really interesting, because I think at least in the denim space, there's actually quite a bit of value in the worn look, and people are paying a premium for it. And so like things like new and old, I think if you do your business model right, there's interesting dynamic around what value you can capture.
Okay, thanks, Dan. But I think it's not that easy sometimes that to create a right business model. I think you need to search by their own, right? And then by the sense of yourself, and then to collect all the information. Not all, I mean, you need to have the correct sense actually. And a little bit luck probably. So now I would like to address to Kayla. There is a question like that. I'm a fashion student with little income. So how can I get involved in fashion sustainability? Kayla.
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier in my presentation, I think it's all about being creative with what you have. One of the first suggestions I would give is, to learn crafts, really. Like, I think nowadays upcycling is becoming more and more popular. I actually realized that I didn't get to touch upon this when I was doing my presentation, but in my presentation, there was a photo where I was wearing a white dress, and actually it was a dress that the top part was actually completely ruined. And I thought about, discarding it, but I actually have, a good friend of mine, their company is called Fashion Clinic. And what they do is they redesign clothes and repair clothes. So I took it to them and was like, I have this dress that I don't want, and I have this dress that I want to repair. Can we put them together? And that's what they did. And I was actually able to have a new piece of garment. And since then, I've actually done it multiple times. And so if you are able to learn how to sew, especially if you're a fashion student, if you are able to learn how to sew, if you learn how to embroidery, there's so many fun ways that you can rewear your clothes and make them new. And also, I just wanted to talk about a little bit very quickly, when choosing clothes, again, even though you're paying a little more for that one item, you'll treasure it more. Like what Edwin was talking about, if you're able to really, if you're paying more and you really like it and you really treasure it, then it's not going to matter if you have 10 or 1. You're going to wear it for a long, long time. And I think if you're also able to learn how to mix and match, then you won't have to feel like you're constantly wearing the same outfit. Change it up. There's so many different ways that you can change it up. I think that's like a separate conversation on styling, but that's what I would suggest.
I mean, thrifting too, right? I mean, Kayla,
Yeah.
you and I, we were at an event, 3-4 months ago. Like the quality of the garments there, like
We're actually doing another
one. It doesn't feel like
everybody wants to come. Yeah, for sure. Thrifting. Secondhand clothes. I think, like I said earlier, I think there used to be a taboo, but I think now more and more people are willing to accept the. I think before people thought that was bad luck to wear old clothes. But I think now there is definitely a shift. And like I said, on June 18th, a little plug here, we're doing a secondhand market at the space that I help run in Central. So if you are based in Hong Kong, please feel free to come by. And I believe that we will actually have workshops as well. So if you want to learn how to upcycle.
Oh, and I would like to share also that with the experience of mom, that I always asking some of the other friends that can I have the secondhand one, or I do like exchange with my friends. Like I think Kayla, you did also. I think that would be quite interesting. Also, like a way that when you have not so much money, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so now that I'm not really sure that we're just going to address to which speaker, but then just listen first. It's that very often we use the technologies to make the fashion industry more sustainable. Yet the use of the electricity of all the machines could be detrimental to the environment too. So how can we strike the balance between sustainability and technology? So I'm not sure, because this for me is Walden and Edwin, both of you can really give the answer. Probably. Okay, probably Walden first, and then we can go back to Edwin.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to, what you're optimizing for. Like if you like ourselves, we are very focused on carbon emissions, and so when you're making trade-off between this new technology versus the old one, being honest and going through exercise like life cycle assessment, so that you're actually quantifying the impact between the status quo and the scenario that you want to go to, I think is one of the best ways to make sure that we're not just chasing the new shiny object. I think this conversation is probably quite interesting around the rise of NFTs and blockchain technology. in contention with the traditional way, because at least for now, the NFT is pretty energy intensive because of the mining process, but probably a longer conversation there. I'll let Edwin.
You want to get into the metaverse there for a minute there. I think, first of all, there's certainly sustainable sources of energy, right? So if we use renewables as versus coal fire, let's say, the same piece of garment has very different impact on the environment. But I do agree with what Walden is saying there in that. And this is sort of something that I alluded to in my early presentation, which is newness has sort of replaced fashion considerations. We are told to pursue something just because it's different and not necessarily better. And if you think about the fashion industry, we're probably one of the most backward in terms of technology. The T-shirt that we bought 10 years ago is the same T-shirt that we buy tomorrow. It's cotton, it's sewn and made essentially the same way. If you buy a 10-year-old cell phone tomorrow, well, first of all, you can't sell a 10-year-old cell phone, but the phone you had 10 years ago and the phone you have today, in terms of functionality and utility, it's completely different. So in many sense, one of the challenges with our industry is not that we have too much technology, is that we don't have enough functionality, and we have not embraced the connectiveness of what we expect or what we demand of our new lifestyles. Walden talked about NFTs and what have you, but everything that we use, our phones, our watches, and everything that we use are multi-purpose, and they have utility. They protect us, they inform us, they keep us safe. Our clothes, we serve our clothes. We take them off when it's hot, when they're dirty, we have to go clean them. It is really very, very 19th century. And so there are lots of opportunities to disrupt this stuff, because this is the most expensive dumb wearable that we bring around every day, and it's ripe for disruption.
Okay, it's great to know for the sharing. But I would like to also share from the tech industry. I mean, from my part, for me, I would say technologies is helping us quite a lot, especially during the pandemic, or I would say that it was sealed in some cities, so that we do use the technology to do the inspection actually. So I think you have to see in which way that in which way you are using that. So it doesn't mean that it's bad things, but then it also can help people to do to achieve the things that you would like to have. So, okay, great. So I actually have a question wants to go to Edwin, but go back to the first question I asked Walden and Kayla, that what's your challenge, right? As a startup, an entrepreneur. And for Edwin, for those who is not necessary, or they are not going to as a startup owner or entrepreneurs. So how can these students equip themselves, especially the knowledge that you mentioned in the keynote section, the first and the second one, okay? Okay, maybe the second one I will see that if I'm gonna ask later on. The first. Yeah.
Well, I think doing exactly what some of the people who are sending in who are communicating with us right now, which is ask great questions. I think one of the best way to learn is to listen, make keen observations, and then ask and be very curious about what is going on, and take interest in things that are outside our sphere of comfort, our sphere of expertise. And things that we want to get better at. I think these are all great learning strategies that we should pick up in school, and that would give us help us to be lifelong learners.
Okay, so the next question is it's actually come up with this question, is that how you, I mean, with the technologies that you you introduced, that how you pair them up with the big brands, and then with the right technology to contribute to the sustainable fashion industry, how you pair that up, because you know it's not that easy to pair them up in the right thing.
Right. It's sort of a little bit the wrong question. When I'm not. I think a better question would be asked is, if you are a research center and you're based in Hong Kong, how do you differentiate yourself from other people that are doing research in all around the world, and how do you create a competitive advantage, taking advantage of the fact that we're in Hong Kong, so that we provide unique types of solutions to people in the marketplace. So when we asked ourselves that question, what we say is that Hong Kong is a wonderful location because it is on the crossroads of everybody's global supply chain. Everybody, if you are in the fashion industry, sooner or later, your supply chain touches Hong Kong. So let's take advantage of that and make sure we have great upstream and downstream visibility from what is going on. Ask great questions and understand where people's pain points are and where they have challenges. And then you work backwards from there. So what are the issues that companies are facing? What would they like to solve for? And can we add value, and can we help them solve that problem? So one is an internal question, so an inward journey. You know, what are we good at? And the other one is the outward question, which is, what does the world need? And where X meets Y is where success happens.
Oh, that's great. Because actually you just answered one of the questions just coming up now, you know. So probably I can ask to Kayla and to Kayla now, that can speakers share a bit about the competitive advantage of Hong Kong in fashion sustainable development? Okay, Kayla or Edwin already like answered some part of it, that you need to know the needs, and then you know that it's kind of like a center in Hong Kong. So Kayla, what do you think? The same question to you.
I think that Hong Kong has a lot of you know, great talented designers, and to be very honest, I feel like they still haven't been showcased around the world. And also, being in Asia, you know, you have the ability to reach out to all of the manufacturing hubs easier than most, right? So you're actually more able to go and see these places and learn about what their new technology is, learn about how they're doing it, and then you can kind of bring that overseas. And I feel like people haven't really honed in on that yet. I think you know, when it comes to, you know, brands coming out of Hong Kong, I feel like there really aren't that many that are, you know, really up there, really doing, you know, the most for sustainability. So I actually think that there is still a lot of work. I really don't know how much I can speak on this, because I feel like this has more to do with technological side, I guess, in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe Walden has more.
Yeah, probably Walden.
On this.
You can.
Yeah, I think this is where like a panel like this is kind of really interesting, because for me, like Hong Kong has part of the culture, like has part of that sense of culture pool where like you get a lot of content creators, you get a lot of people that are tuning into, I mean, you know, the Hong Kong outreach just happened, and you know that doesn't happen, you know, all around the world. So like you have a part of like culture that's happening in Hong Kong, and you have you know, research and innovations that are happening coming out of places like Hong Kong Retail, and then you have designers and you have access to manufacturers, and you know it's you have a lot of ingredients to actually make Hong Kong a fairly competitive space with sustainable fashion. But I think there aren't enough crossing or cross-pollination across the communities, where the culture side is interacting with the innovation side, is interacting with the consumer side. But we have a lot of ingredients.
Yeah, I would like to support that. Actually, before I come to PFI, I worked in a American brand, and you know how is their trip of their designers? They went to Europe first, American, and then Europe, and then afterwards they come back to Shanshipou first. They come to Shanshipou, and then they go inside. They go into mainland for the developing, and then I would say that I was at that time probably 20 something already, and I would really feel amazed because I'm personally from Taiwan. There is no place that which is such small and can including everything inside. So I would say this is also like probably. Like really, you are inside Hong Kong, you cannot really see how beautiful it is. Yeah, probably.
Well, Lauren, you moved unspun from the Silicon Valley back to Hong Kong during probably one of the worst periods to be in Hong Kong. Could you explain that?
Okay, great.
Well, because you are here and Kayla are here. Yeah, that's. I think actually, like, if you want to build a fashion brand or a fashion platform, you can do it. There are a few competitive places, right? Like you can do it in New York, you can do it probably in Tokyo, you can in Shanghai, probably, and Milan, Paris potentially, and Hong Kong. Like, and because we Unspun is not just focused on the consumer side, like we have the whole supply chain side. Being able to access cheap machinery and custom hardware parts for us was also quite a need, and that's why we came back and access Shenzhen, but also have those exposure points to the consumer market in a very small way to start, to be able to grow something from there. I think the verdict is still out whether that was the wife's decision, but at least those were the considerations.
Okay, that's interesting. So actually, it's still only have 10 minutes to go, but I would like to ask a very important question to three of you. That so as a sustainable frontiers, so who has been in this journey so long, what are the things you would like to be, you think that is useful to our audience to take away? And followed with another question, but then I think let's start with this first. Probably Edwin, you go first.
Oh, I think what I heard from both Kayla and Walden today is that if you want to be successful, the persistence is probably one of the first things you need to learn. And persistence is how do you recover from setbacks? How do you pick yourself up and continue down? Now, how do you learn and grow from everything that happened to you? And then you mix that with a right amount of optimism that but yet at the same time you have to have some impatience, and because you can't be angry or upset all the time, so you have to be optimistic. But at the same time, you can't be content the way things are, so you have to have a bit of impatience. And so the yin and the yang is that if you have all those things, I think the right things will happen to you. And that I think it was Kayla who said this, but I think that the important thing is to understand that success and making money is a byproduct of doing the right things. So the end our end is to do the right things, create a brand that is or a business that has value, that is distinctive, that does good, and that if we can continue down that road, the other things will happen. Fame, fortune will happen. But if you seek fame and fortune, you miss out on all the other stuff, and you end up being an unhappy rich person. So I think those are all. There's nothing very concrete there, but I think those are all important for young people to have mental preparations for.
Okay, thank you, Erin. Indeed, I think I know what you mean, especially with so many years here. And then I would address the same question to probably Kayla first. What do you think about it? What do you think that they can really take away for tonight, for this evening?
Yeah, I think for me is, I think when we talk about sustainability nowadays, people think that it's very, either it's unattainable or it's too complicated or like there's too many parts to it. But I think at the end of the day, sustainability is like the big umbrella, right? There's so many different ways of combating it or going about it. It's like with the energy question, right? Like you can't really tackle everything at once. I think that's not realistic. I think it's more about being able to take that one step to say, oh, today I'm going to try and do this, and then maybe a week later I'm going to try and do that. I think it's just the effort of trying to take different steps to be more conscious. Like you said, the word sustainability, it's become such a catchphrase that I feel like it's kind of lost its meaning. So to me, it's more about incorporating new habits, right, that are going to be better for the planet in the long run, whether it be not using a straw, whether it be supporting a local brand or supporting a slow fashion brand. All these little things combined really makes up, I think, the future of where we're going. So I hope that's kind of what we can see today is just maybe tomorrow you'll try something new. Yeah.
Thanks, Kayla. So, Walden, what's your point of view?
I think from this panel, what my selfish wish is to be able to showcase like the diversity of quote unquote sustainable fashion community we have here in Hong Kong. Like Edwin made it sound like it's so easy. Like he touches on Hong Kong retail, and the work that it does touches on so many different aspects, from agriculture for cotton to all the way to recycling facility, and some of these things you can touch and feel and experience actually in Hong Kong. And like Kayla is making it also sound like she's having a very easy time, but she's one of the strongest advocates for sustainable consumption all around the world. And like we have a pretty diverse ecosystem here. Maybe it's not in every single shopping mall that you have access to, but if you go beyond the service, you have access to them. And yeah, I think there's so much here that we can still benefit from.
Thank you, Wadam. And I would like to say, actually, if you see the speakers for today, including me, Kayla and Wadam, you have your own company and then you insist for a while. I mean, it's a long time actually. So we are not talking about me and Edwin. I'm here in this company for 17 years. No, yeah, sorry. I think 15 years. And Edwin, I'm not going to mention, okay, but 2-digit. Yeah. But then,
oh, I'm old, yeah.
No, me too here. Okay, 2-digit. But I think, I mean, the new, I would say students or the young people, you need to insist on the things that you focus. And of course, that not saying like people say like today I'm doing this, tomorrow I'm doing the others. And then, but of course that you need to always kind of like adjust yourself. Is this really like meet the requirement of your client or the requirement in this society? So I would like to say a thank you for all the panelists to give us the deep insight. It's very interesting to see a different point of view from different stakeholders. And I'm sure that audience will put some of them into their pocket. So thanks again, Morgan, Kayla, and Edwin. And I would like to share a short quote from Sir Winston Churchill. There is not the end, it's even the beginning of the end. But it is perhaps the end of the beginning. So we have now innovation and the greener ethical producer, and together with the third-party certification, but it's just the beginning. So we need to work together to leave the goods to the next generation. So I'm now pass the time to Adrian with the lucky draw and wrap up for you in the end. So stay with us. Adrian, are you here?
Thank you, Candace, for leading the discussion, and thank you, Edwin, Walden, and Kayla for the fruitful discussion, insightful answers to the questions, and encouraging advice to our audience. Before we do the final wrap-up for tonight's event, let's move on to the lucky draw session.
For those who joined the event evaluation survey before 8:30, we'll use your name provided as the lucky draw ticket. We would like to take this opportunity to thank Basics for Basics, an ethical fashion brand based in Hong Kong, for sponsoring the lucky draw prizes tonight. Basics for Basics focuses on creating garments that access your second skin. They've opted out from making products in mass to avoid waste and to make sure that everything is ethically and sustainably made to ensure you, the planet, and everyone else involved feel good about what you wear.
Our third prize is $500 Basics for Basics gift voucher. Let's see who our third prize winner is.
Our second prize is a $1,000 Basics for Basics gift voucher. Let's see who our second prize winner is. Congratulations, Rico.
Our ultimate prize is 1,500 e-gift voucher from Basics for Basics. Let's see who our prize winner is. Congrats, Yip Si Wo. All of you will be contacted by email shortly.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are approaching the end of our night. We've heard a lot of innovative insights from our speakers and have all stretched our knowledge boundary. There is a saying, to build the future, you need to know the past. We've heard from Edwin on how the fashion industry became one of the most polluted industry in the world. Businesses can do less bad and more good by bringing all these splendid and achievable ideas from the lab to the market. Like how Edwin encouraged us at the end of his session. Think beyond carbon neutral, but like carbon negative.
So, what exactly has business been doing to reduce carbon emission? Through collaborating with innovative partners and smart business models, Walden and Unspun have already got a head start by 3D printing jeans. They are able to reduce carbon emissions and landfill waste dramatically. Future business owners from the audience can consider combining technology with sustainability to grow your business.
And for those who are not planning to be a business owner, you're also able to partake in making a difference. As consumers, Kayla's sharing has hugely hit the right note. As consumers, we can think about the product's lifespans, support local and good companies, quality, not quantity, and try to upcycle and thrift.
We have answered all those what questions, what consumers can do, what business owners can do. Candace has answered the biggest how question, how consumers can validate sustainability. Next time, when I go shopping, I'll take note on eco labels, which represent verification work complete by independent parties on certifying sustainable products and services. By purchasing and supporting these products, we push the industry to produce and market more eco-friendly products, creating a better and greener world.
With these real-life business practices, lifestyles, it is now your call to act on what has been shared and partake in this global movement on building a sustainable future.
Please give a big round of applause to our speakers, Edwin, Walden, Kayla, and Candace. We would also like to reiterate our thankfulness to our sponsor, Basics for Basics, for the lucky draw gift tonight. In addition, we would like to extend our deep gratitude to our project advisor, Mr. Ken Mark, who has been a critical factor to our team's success. We would also like to thank the MBA office, Professor Chang, Stephanie Ng, Circle Hoon, for your great support and guidance throughout the journey, making this a fruitful forum.
Also, we would like to thank you who has joined us tonight. We hope that our forum has been educative, enlightening, and mostly thought-provoking on how to dress fashionably and sustainably, from fashion's conscious to fashion's conscience. Finally, we would like to thank our amazing organizing committee for their dedication and effort. This evening wouldn't have been a success without them. Thank you and good night.